shortwave TV, alternative media television, hard-hitting and in your face. I want to welcome everybody to the live broadcast. We, of course, have our live stream rocking and rolling via Google Hangout, and also our radio syndicate, AFR, American Freedom Radio. Make sure to give them a shout. We're enjoying the tunes this good afternoon. So it is abundantly clear that Obama has an agenda in Iran. That is just, it's been the agenda from day one. And I mentioned this when we just started the broadcast about 15 minutes ago. This agenda, the reason for the talk of war, the reason they're talking of war now, today, July 23rd, 2013, and this has all been baked into the program. This has all been baked into the boiling pot of water. The president, along with those that control him, have been cultivating and orchestrating and planning on the assassination of Bashar al-Assad. This has been in process for a good part of a year. But it's a process that has been unsuccessful. It's the reason for Benghazi Gate. It's the reason for the trafficking of these weapons of war out of newly toppled Libya into Syria. This is why the administration here in the United States has been arming the insurgents, terrorist organizations linked to Al-Qaeda, because this has all been a part of the war game. This has all been part of the strategy. But now, because the President of the United States has been unsuccessful in his hit, in his murder attempt of Bashar al-Assad, who was living on a warship off the coast, as any smart leader would do at this given point if the United States had a hit on you, much like Michael Hastings, many people believe. Now there's talk of a growing crisis, a growing need for intervention in Syria as a result of a humanitarian issue is what they want to sell you. So what the Obama administration is selling is that in order to save the innocent lives of Syrian civilians from being murdered, the United States has to go in and invade Syria, a sovereign independent nation, and murder Syrian civilians to prevent the murder of innocent Syrian civilians from Bashar al-Assad. You see how that doesn't make any kind of rational sense at all. Now, I had a friend send me an article, and this was an article that was actually printed about a week ago, which provides a glimpse into the future regarding the war that we've been talking about, and I've personally been talking about for over 36 months. And this is a direct quote. It says, his foreign allies have all doubled down on him. Iran is all in. Russia is all in. Shiite militants are flowing into the fight from Iraq. And Hezbollah fighters have invaded Syria by the thousands. Now, in referring to doubled down on him, foreign allies have doubled down. Iran is all in. Russia is all in. They're referring to the president here in the United States and the reality of this new, but not so new, because it's been a cultivated, engineered, and manufactured war in this part of the world. Now, many Americans believed when they voted for the president that he would actually unify the nation, that he would actually bring people together, that he would not continue the Bush-era policies of aggression in the Middle East, of these war crimes that have continued, of a continuation of the wiretapping that has just broke via the NSA, the leaks from people like Edward Snowden, among others, people hot on the trail of new breaking stories, people like Michael Hastings, Greenwald, who's been connected to that breach as a just real excellent independent journalist. The people are starting to see, and it's one of the reasons President Barack Obama's approval rating is at an all-time low, hitting the low 40s, literally as I deliver this video, is people understand fundamentally now that they were lied to. People also fundamentally understand, and I'm hearing this from a liberal base here, even in Arizona, which is heavily guided, and there's a majority conservative base here in the great state of Arizona. It's one of the reasons I like Arizona as a state so much, and I like our conservative values and principles. But even the liberal base, I am hearing from people that I know, from friends, from acquaintances, even them themselves are telling me things like, that was unbelievable what President Barack Obama said the other day about Trayvon Martin, his involvement in the George Zimmerman case. They're telling me, wow, that is the most unprofessional thing I've ever seen a president do. He should get his nose. That's not even his business in the first place. And the comments in and of themselves, very, very racist in the opinion of a lot of Americans. Now, I actually didn't even talk about this yesterday because I've been a little tired, quite frankly. I don't think that the big focus, tired of the story, tired of the Zimmerman-Trayvon media war, because it's important that we do not fall into that trap. Again, I discussed this in great detail over the weekend with one of my video uploads, and it's the intention of the regime here in the United States to distract, to create racial divide, create warring among the people so that they're not focused on the real truth. They're not focused on what's happening geopolitically with the war in Syria, the U.S. government's clear sight and agenda in Persia, the path to Iran, and many people not awake to this truth. But what was amazing is that Zimmerman quickly went from national scandal, probably the most hated man, which the media can create any kind of narrative that they want now. If they want to burn you, destroy you, kill you, ruin you, they can literally do it overnight. Via the NSA, they can put together any kind of narrative that they want, bring up historical text messages, your archive of emails, take it out of context, just like they did with the voice recording NBC did, which is now being sued by the Zimmerman camp for grossly distorting his comments that they wanted you to think and believe were racist when they were anything but racist, taking it completely out of context. So it's extremely important that we don't lose sight of the real truth. But it was amazing to see George Zimmerman go from hero, where he's literally, along with another gentleman, helping a family of 4 overturned in their vehicle. Reports that I read said that the vehicle was engulfed in flames, helping to save the family's life. So talk about poetic justice. Talk about poetic justice for George Zimmerman. So good for him. Good for him. And I'm interested to see, it probably hasn't changed mainstream perception at all. In fact, that story had really kind of gotten snuffed out of the mainstream media. You know, I've talked a lot about, and I talked a little bit about today, just kind of the hypocrisy and the ridiculous nature of A King is Born in Great Britain, and how there is so much intense scrutiny and media focus, especially among the pop culture camps, on this new baby that comes from a royal vagina. A lot of people didn't like when I used that word, even though it's a technical word, vagina. It's a scientific term, vagina. I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, I don't know if any of you have ever seen the vagina monologues, but if you think using the word vagina is flagrant, you should definitely see that production. I believe that they have a Broadway show. So more BS, more bullshit reasons that they're creating out of thin air, much like our financial system and Wall Street does with synthetic securities and the issuance of debt, and the stock and bond market and derivative market as it exists today, are creating bullshit out of thin air to sell you on the idea of this war in Syria. People like John McCain, very much behind this. But amidst this backdrop, we have all of this pop culture buzz around a new baby, the baby born with the silver spoon. Anthony Weiner's back in the news, facing new sex chat allegations, according to The Dirty, posting explicit Facebook and FormSpring exchanges. FormSpring, an alternative to Facebook, less known. He says, quote, "I'm deeply flawed." Weiner releases a statement acknowledging that at least some of the messages are authentic. So the scandal continues. Nothing ever changes. And that's what's so incredible about it, is that nothing ever changes. We know these people are scumbags. We know that these people are liars. The CIA backs a $630,000 study into how to control global weather through geoengineering. A lot of people say that this is conspiracy theory. Say that, that the modification of weather isn't possible. Many of you have heard of HARP. A lot of people think that this is what influenced tsunamis that we saw in Japan off the coast, that this potentially could have influenced Hurricane Sandy here in the United States. Here we have living proof. And I'll put this on our Facebook page, which we're updating regularly now on a consistent daily basis. So check it out. We have about 10 to 15 unique posts coming out on a daily basis. A lot of articles that I'm reading that are being put into the content that you'll later see in some of my videos, some of our content, others that you might not. But the CIA, this is according to The Independent, backed $630,000 worth into how to control global weather through geoengineering, study part funded by the CIA to investigate national security implications of geoengineering. So this is extremely powerful stuff, and it kind of brings the veil off the eyes of the buying sheeple for a moment and proves that this is a reality, that this isn't just conspiracy tinfoil hat talk. This is very much within the wheelhouse and within the capability of governments around the world, not just here in the United States. It says here that the power, reach, and influence of the Central Intelligence Agency is a staple of conspiracy theories. The news that the CIA is reportedly part funding a scientific geoengineering study into how to control the weather is unlikely to dampen speculation over their activities. According to U.S. website Mother Jones, the CIA is helping to fund a study by the National Academy of Sciences that will investigate whether humans could use geoengineering, which is defined as deliberate and large-scale intervention in the Earth's climatic system, to stop climate change. The website goes on to describe the study as an investigation into a limited number of proposed geoengineering techniques. Now, we've seen this at the Olympic Games, for instance, where they're creating cloud formation and they're creating precipitation from this type of technology, being reported not for the first time, but being reported more in the mainstream now, where people are beginning to realize that this is for real. Another breaking story, and I actually want to show you this, so let me go to the split screen as soon as I can find it. Go back here to our Google Hangout. Let's go to the screen share. Here we are. CNET. Get them off. Man gets into strip club wearing Google Glass. Let me make sure that actually worked and that we didn't crash our systems here. Okay, that looks like that did work. Just making sure you guys are still with me. It says, get them off. Man gets into a strip club wearing Google Glass. Patrick Hill, an irregular visitor to strip clubs, allegedly, fascinates the doorman with his device so much that he's allowed into a New York strip club wearing Google Glass. So he walks in with a reporter. I believe it was from the New York Times, and I'm looking here just to verify. It says here, and so it was the last month New York web developer Patrick Hill decided if he could slide past the doorman of a strip club wearing Google Glass. So he was accompanied by a New York Post reporter. A New York Post reporter accompanies him. You can watch the video here. I just watched the first 30 seconds or so. I'm not sure if there's any graphic material. I don't think that there is. They probably wouldn't get away with posting it here on CNET. But it does show how he's able to slide into the strip club, which brings up just a host of questions regarding this new technology and how people are going to wear this device, what it means for our society, what it means for privacy in a post-enlightened world, post the NSA leak, post-Edward Snowden. And I mentioned this in my video earlier today. I've had a lot of liberal acquaintances and friends really begin raising eyebrows and asking me questions about Edward Snowden. Many of the people I'm talking with believe Snowden could very likely be a double agent. This is something that we actually looked at initially when the story was breaking. A lot of liberal friends that I have, a lot of acquaintances, people that I know, I think it's very highly peculiar that a gentleman with a successful career and a wife who lived out in Hawaii, pretty much high on the hog, would selflessly give himself up for a cause in the greater good, which of course I certainly think is possible. And I do think that there's a lot of good people that would do that and that have done that. I think in a lot of respect, I'm an example of that. And a lot of you are tuning in But it's interesting, very interesting to me, to see people that are so politically diametrically opposed to the conservative viewpoint now even begin questioning these leaks, which is kind of a testament to the growing unrest and the growing distrust among the American people. Obama says that he has a little over 1,200 days left in office. Barack Obama knows how much time he has left as President of the United States. He said so last night at an Organizing for Action event in Washington, D.C. He says, "I always remind people, I've run my last campaign. Michelle is not sorry about it," Obama says to laughter. All I have to say about this is thank God. Thank God we only have 1,200 days left. But do we only have 1,200 days left for the New World Order, their agenda, the Illuminati, the power structure, however you want to define those that rule and control modern civilization? That's up to you. The question you need to ask, does anything really fundamentally change? I think the answer we all know, and you all know, is an affirmative negative. 1,200 days left. There was also a confirmed left-wing plant that has been recently outed at a Houston pro-Zimmerman rally. She was holding a sign saying, "We're racist and proud of it," wearing some retro sunglasses. So, very much they will plant, and this happens a lot, they'll plant liberals, they'll plant those from the Democratic Party, and they'll try to enrage, create violence, create some kind of controversy as a part of a political strategy, to be very self-serving towards the agenda of this administration. Also read a report that police were investigating a burning swastika placed on a San Bernardino street. So we're seeing just an increase and a rise in this kind of action and controversy of the of things like the Zimmerman Trayvon trial. Also wanted to mention that AMTV has been recognized for our video submission surveillance state. We, of course, submitted this to the InfoWars Online Film Festival and has been named a top finalist in the contest itself. And I want to thank everybody for your support, everybody for making that a reality, those of you that have already shared the film. It's kind of interesting. They just came out with a new film called State of Mind, which reminds me of a lot of surveillance state itself, and how we're all built into the Google algorithm, how we are all built into this system, into the hive mind, and how it's controlling through predictive technology and learning our behavior, the future outcome of Americans and those of us around the world. Also, make sure to check out our new Pinterest, however you want to say it, account. I know some of you are pretty familiar with that website, frequent it a lot. It's kind of cool because you can add images, and we've just started to get it going. We're at Pinterest, AMTV Media, /AMTV Media, and we put a lot of our memes that we're working on throughout the week, a lot of things, a lot of images on the Second Amendment, history, art, the Illuminati, famous quotes, rants, and I believe we're able to also link to and get some video content up and running, which I think is pretty cool. Love to hear from you guys, and make sure to drop any comments that you might have in our chat. I'll see if I can't get that going in a minute. Also, the Pope was in the news, makes a major wrong turn, puts Pope in frenzied crowd. Brazilian crowds delight Pope, frustrate security. In Rio, a wrong turn sent a humble, carrying Pope Francis into the thick of a frenzied Rio crowd Monday, in his first minutes back in South America since becoming the official, quote-unquote, Pope. It was a nightmare for security officials, but for the clearly delighted Pope, just another opportunity to connect. Static throngs forced his crew to repeatedly come to a standstill weeks after violent protests against the government paralyzed parts of Brazil. Francis's driver had turned into the wrong side of a boulevard at one point, missing lanes that had been cleared. Other parts of the Pope's route to the city center weren't lined with fencing, giving the throngs more chances to get close, with uniformed police officers nowhere in sight to act as crowd control. So what do you think? What do you think is the intention politically, the number one intention, at least at this point? Is it war? Is it Syria? Is that why we're getting so many distractions within pop culture, the British media, the American media? At this point, we have articles coming out on the Pope. In the meantime, we look at what's happening economically here in the United States, and we are very much entering a new bubble, in my opinion, with the stock market hitting all-time highs, the Dow Jones Industrial Average literally back through the roof at 15,500 plus, the S&P 500 almost at 1,700. And I'm starting to see things change. I'm starting to see the mentality among the American people change again, where again our society is dominated by two fundamental human drivers of emotion. Fear, number one, greed, number two. Fear and greed. Fear and greed. We saw greed take root pre-crash 2008. Of course, it always ends badly. Manias always do. We saw this with the tech boom that popped in the dot-com era during the 2000s with the advent of the internet and any latest, greatest technology company, blowing up into the stratosphere when they didn't make any money. We saw what happens when people get greedy, when that reaches a crescendo, much like you're listening to a beautiful symphony. It pops. Same thing is happening now. And the primary fundamental human emotion that has dominated since 2008, and for good reason, because it's been a matter of survival, is fear. People very fearful once losing their home, losing their real estate, watching prices collapse, watching their economic situation deteriorate, things like high unemployment in the States. We've seen riots, not just here in the U.S., with protests from Occupy Wall Street and others, really from both sides, liberal, Democrat, conservative, Republican, libertarian. And we saw this in great parts of the rest of the world, very violent riots in Greece. We've, of course, seen this in the Middle East, throughout Europe itself, has been in shambles. And so fear has dominated that human experience and dominates the human experience in general. But now we are moving into a new bubble. Now we are moving into something that is even more dangerous. And you can see this right now, and I don't think we're back to the greed part at all. In fact, I'm waiting. Wait until Flip My House is back on TV. Wait until your taxi driver is selling you on a new stock tip. Wait until the plumber that comes in to fix your house is telling you about how he's making more money in the stock market than he is plumbing. Then you'll know that we're reaching the next historical leg in this bubble. Because again, this has very much been a cyclical event over the past few years, really much of the past few decades. It's been a cyclical, forced deleveraging of U.S. capital markets and capital markets around the world, which the United States and the Fed and Ben Bernanke, it's the reason they have interest rates at zero, can't allow to happen, which is why they're artificially propping the markets up. Because any deleveraging that were to take place, which is a necessity to capitalism and is a necessity to our system actually surviving long term, which it won't. And it clearly isn't today. It's why we have a national debt approaching $17 trillion and growing. It's why we're in such dire straits. They're artificially inflating a broken model and a Ponzi scheme that will eventually have grave repercussions for the people of the world. And I find it interesting and also funny because, in college and, of course I was in the financial services industry and I was a professional in the finance arena for over 10 years. I always find it funny when you're in school and you're learning about fundamentals and cash flow statements and balance sheet, and you take accounting courses and, principles of finance, how to evaluate, discount rates, dividend yield, these kinds of things. All things that should be a reality of our system really don't apply to it. Because again, when you have a Ponzi scheme and you're operating in a casino environment, fundamentals don't matter. And it's exactly why people don't understand why the stock market is rising, why it won't go down, and why we're now having a new bubble. And we're even seeing this with housing, where housing, for example, in Arizona is already up 30% for the year. 30% return on your investment in a year. Post a collapse that wiped home prices 80% from the peak just a few years ago. So this is the incredible repeat, dose number 2 of a very bad event, soon to crush us further into poverty here in the United States. So it's a reason why I really like, and I'm not an advisor, but I'm very pro commodities, gold, silver, really commodities in general, anything to combat. People want to know what do we do economically, financially. Get involved in tangible assets, real assets, whether or not it's gold or silver or something else, corn, wheat, palladium, anything like that is tangible, does well in an inflationary environment, does well in a Ponzi scheme environment, also does very well in a crash scenario, which at some point we know is going to hit. And the reason for that is there's very much a herd mentality that at least the astute investors know, and the institutional investors, they know it's a Ponzi scheme that they're running it. And so when the herd begins to move and then they see the door or the light at the end of the tunnel begin to close, like they did in 2008, they more than likely engineer that event themselves through the algorithm that is Wall Street, that again is 1,000 million times ahead of you or the human brain in general, much like the Google algorithm. The herd will rush to the exits. And when that happens, the institutional investors, the big Wall Street money, the hedge fund owners will be out way before you, and they will get out and they will take their profits, and you will lose because you cannot compete in this kind of world. You cannot compete in this type of Bernie Madoff scenario any longer. So it really is incredible. Gold, 1343. That was up just about 0.5% today. Oil, a lot of people cognizant of oil prices. They've been rising. What it costs to fill up a tank. You've got a truck out here in Arizona. It's going to cost you $80 or more. If you're, pumping 87 into your tank, it's going to be less, of course, if you've got a car, you've got something with, that gets better miles per gallon. But at least the way that I see it, and I see what's happening economically and with our market system, I actually think that the artificial bull runs a lot higher. And I think we could very likely see Dow 18,000, and it could go higher from there. And not until we have another mania where, again, your taxi driver and the guy you ride with in the elevator and your plumber and those at your local church and the people you meet at the grocery store are talking stocks, will it be the next? We know we're running into a major financial crash, a material crash in this artificial system. Of course, the real economy has already been in the crapper for years now, and nothing's really changed. I mean, you look at these surveys and people are, not confident of their future. 60%, according to a survey I read this morning, believe that the country is headed in the wrong direction. Obama's approval rating is in the doldrums, almost at an all-time low, in the low 40s. I believe it was at 41% when I read earlier today. A Homeland Security official was probed and has been probed. I think this is a part of a overall campaign of the DHS to try to show the American people that it's okay that they know everything about you and that they're wiretapping your phones and your cell phone and your text messages and your voice mail and all that kind of stuff by doing it to their own, or at least trying to give you the impression that they actually are. From the Associated Press, President Barack Obama's choice to be the number 2 official at the Homeland Security Department, of course, Janet Napolitano had just stepped down, is under investigation for his role in helping a company run by a brother of former Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton. See how they keep the rats real close. Alejandro, if I'm saying his last name correctly, Maricas, that's kind of interesting, Director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, is being investigated for his role in helping the company secure an international investor visa for a Chinese executive, according to congressional officials briefed on the investigation. The officials spoke only on the condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to release details of the investigation. This gentleman was named by Homeland Security Inspector General's office as a target in an ongoing investigation involving the foreign investor program run by U.S. CIS, according to an email sent to lawmakers late Monday. The IG's office said, at this point in our investigation, we do not have any findings of criminal misconduct. The email did not specify any criminal allegations it might be investigating. Of course, Hillary Clinton, another rat leaving the nest, but be running, of course, for the next presidential race, stepped down as Secretary of State on February 1st. So, I mean, you know, it's amazing to see all of these people and this constant revolving door between Washington and Wall Street. John Corzine, a perfect example of this, where he's in that revolving door, a politician who lies to the American people, rips people off, then he goes through the revolving door. He's, you know, director-in-chief, CEO of MF Global, rips people off in that position, and then the revolving door just continues. And it really is gross. It really is grotesque. As I've said many times before, the American people need to wake up to the reality and to the fact that people really all around the world need to realize and understand that it is you, the people, collectively that have the most power. And it is you, the people, collectively, that government fears, that these criminals fear, that Washington and Wall Street fears. Because if they are unable to maintain order, if they are unable to control the collective hive mind via Google, via these algorithms, via Wall Street, via the mainstream media, there would be and will be chaos in the streets of a very controlled populace, which is the reality of the world that we live in today. Many people, again, living in a negative fear-back loop that are very much dependent on the system, very much dependent on the government, very much dependent on all these things, which makes them a servant, where they're serving these people, and these people are in control of them. You know, it sets a very important precedent for the future. I think a lot of this is changing. I think that we're seeing this move, and we're seeing this paradigm shift where people are realizing that they don't need to rely on the system, that if a system is already insolvent and bankrupt and wrong, and it isn't working, that it's not something that they have to engage in going forward. And we're seeing this everywhere across the political and economic and social spectrums. I'm Christopher Green. Great broadcast today. Hopefully we didn't have too many technical difficulties. We're running a simultaneous broadcast via our radio syndicate, also here on Google Hangout. I sure as heck enjoy doing the shows. I'll have some great video content for you coming up next. Make sure to follow us. Check out our Facebook page. Got a tremendous amount of new activity hitting daily, really Monday through Friday and through the weekend. Check it out. And please contribute. You know, I want to see what you guys are reading. I want you guys to send me pointers. Send us tips. Send me tips. Send us news. We're funneling through all this information, doing our best job of getting it out to the viewing public. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at Greenwave. Check out our new Pinterest account. Join us there. And just thanks again for all your tremendous support. I'm Christopher Green, hard-hitting and in your face. I am out, AMTV Live, July 23rd, 2013.